calling the meeting of the City of Pompano Beach Planning and Zoning Board for Wednesday, February 26, 2025 to order. And before we do roll call, I want to just remind everybody to turn their phones to either silent or off. And I'd like to welcome a new member to the board tonight, Gigi Dobick. Did I pronounce that correct? Dubeck. Well, Gigi, we're glad to have you join us. Also tonight, we have several alternates here. Dave Menges, welcome. And of course, Carrie Ann Worley, who has been an alternate for some time. And Marianne Edge is planning on joining us tonight, and so she may come in just a minute. But in the meantime, Bobby, would you call the roll?
Gigi Dubeck.
Yes.
Marianne Edge. Paul Fisher.
Here.
Robert Hartzell.
Here.
David Mingus.
Here.
Carrie Ann Worley.
Here.
Carla Coleman.
Here. And we will now observe 30 seconds of silence, as is usual at the beginning of our meetings. First item on tonight's agenda is approval of last month's minutes. Does anyone have any corrections to last month's minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of January 22nd, 2025.
Just second. Motion to approve. Second.
Bobby, would you call the roll, please?
Paul Fisher.
Yes.
Robert Hartzell.
Yes.
Gigi Dubeck.
Yes.
David Mingus.
Yes.
Carrie Ann Worley.
Yes.
Carla Coleman.
Yes. Next item is anyone in the audience who wishes to testify on any item before the agenda or speak. Would you please stand and be sworn in?
Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. So, first item for tonight's consideration is item LN 461, which is a plat approval, P&Z number 23-14405005. Florida Indoor Tennis, LLC. Ms. Barshesky.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair and board members. For the record, my name is Maggie Barshevsky. The applicant actually changed the name of this plat since it was originally submitted to the Florida Indoor Racket Club plat. This is a 5-acre property located on the south side of Atlantic Boulevard, across the boulevard from Northwest 33rd Avenue. The agent is Elizabeth Sorkisian, Police Land Surveying Incorporated, and is representing the owners of the property, which is Florida Indoor Tennis, LLC. The subject property consists of one vacant parcel. The property will be platted as that parcel, labeled Parcel A. The plat restricts the property to 6 tennis courts. The property is accessed from Atlantic Boulevard. A conceptual plan has been submitted, and the subject property has a land use designation of commercial recreation and zoning of commercial recreation. The plat was reviewed at the Development Review Committee meeting of June 21st, 2023, and found to be in compliance with the city's land development regulations. The applicant has addressed all comments from the DRC meeting. However, I would like a confirmation from the Utilities Department indicating the revised plats easements are sufficient. Therefore, in this report, I suggested a condition requiring the Utility Department's confirmation be provided prior to commission placement. The plat reflects all County Development Review Report recommendations. The review standards for the plat found in Article 5, Part 7 of the Code have been met. Therefore, staff recommends approval of this plat with two conditions that must be completed prior to the placement on the City Commission agenda. And those conditions are, one, the plat cover page must be signed and sealed by a surveyor and signed by all owners, and two, the utility easements required by the City Utilities Department must be reflected on the plat, which they are, but we need to make sure that it's sufficient to the utility director's satisfaction. So that concludes my presentation, but I'd like to, and I could answer any questions, or the applicant is here to do so as well.
Are there any questions from board members to staff? Okay, we'll hear from, I have a couple of questions for you if you'd come up.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Surgdisian from Police Land Surveyors.
May I have your address for the record, please?
Yes, 5381 Nob Hill Road, Sunrise, Florida.
Thank you.
It's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
First, board members, do you have questions for the applicant? Mr. Fisher?
I know we're talking mostly about a plat, obviously a plat tonight, but I just wanted, we talked with the Department of Transportation on the curb cut or anything like that. That's kind of my concern was just in the future, it's kind of a fast, the landfill is fast in that area, and if there's no kind of a turn in, egress and ingress, has there been any conversation with that?
Yes, we have an FDOT pre-approval letter,
Perfect.
which was part of the county application for the plat.
Other questions? Okay. Then I've just got a couple. This is for tennis or racquetball?
I don't really know.
I don't mean racquetball, I mean
Pickleball.
pickleball.
I'm not sure.
Okay, but there's 4 indoor courts and 2 outdoor courts on your conceptual site plan,
Yes.
and it will stay that way. Okay,
Yes.
just because of the reverberation of noise over water, those outdoor courts, I want to ask if there's been any, I know you're at platting right now, but do you plan to meet with the homeowners across the canals?
I'm not sure us for the plat, no.
Oh, for the plat, no,
if
but I mean-
If it would be a condition for site planning that they have to have, as other cities do, they need to have like neighborhood meetings, I'm sure
Okay.
the owners willing to.
Certainly for a plat, we won't, but we will be seeing you back here for site plan approval, I think before as soon as you get, into that process. And I'm not going to make it a condition unless others feel that we should, but I highly recommend that the applicant meet with those neighbors across the waterway.
Yes, I'm going to convey this to
Okay.
the client because I'm not going to be here. The site plan team is separate, they're engineers and stuff like that, not surveyors. So I'm certainly going to tell them so that they're prepared for any questions.
Because it certainly will be a question
Yes.
they get asked.
That is a
when
very,
they come for site plan.
very practical question. Yes, I
Okay.
agree.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Attorney?
I was going to,
Counsel.
I was going to respond when you started talking about adding conditions to the plat, such as the discussion. This is strictly a plat, so the criteria you follow needs to be consistent with that. And
Right.
no conditions involving, as you mentioned, site plan or anything can be attached to that.
Just a piece of little advice. And before we get any farther, okay, thank you. That's all we need. Did anyone from the public like to speak on this project? Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing. Discussion from board members. Anyone want to discuss anything? I've got one question for the attorney. Since we've got new members and several alternates here with us tonight, would you just remind us of what our responsibilities dealing with plats are?
Yeah, plats traditionally have always been functioned on the city's level more of a ministerial function, meaning that we are to comply with Broward County's land use plan platting requirements. And so as long as the criteria that's been outlined before you in your package is satisfied, which Ms. Barshevsky has already indicated as evidence to the board that they have met all of those criteria points, then you have to approve the plat. There's nothing that, unlike other applications that may come before you, this particular application is pretty straightforward. And as I say, I use the word ministerial because staff has already ensured through its process that they have checked all the boxes.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no more questions or discussion, I'll entertain a motion on this item. Mr. Hartzell.
I'll make the,
Pick the right one.
I'm looking for it. In consideration of P&Z application 2314505, I move that the board finds that competent substantial evidence has been presented that satisfies the review criteria and recommends approval of the plat to the city commission without conditions.
Second.
Two conditions.
Oh, with staff's conditions.
Two conditions.
Two conditions.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Bobby, would you call the roll, please?
Who seconded that?
I did.
Karen. Robert Hartzell,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Worley,
Yes.
Gigi Dubeck,
Yes.
Paul Fisher,
Yes.
David Mingus,
Yes.
Carla Coleman.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Maggie. Good luck. Next item, LN-675, P&Z number 2412505. Broward County Board of County Commissioners, major site plan. Ms. Gratzer, glad to have you with us tonight.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you. Let me see. Okay, make sure I hit the right button over there. All right. Good evening, Chair and board members. I'm Lauren Gratzer, Development Services. Today, we're going to talk about the Cobans Transit Operations Facility site plan. So here's just the general location of the property. It is located on the northeast corner of West Copans Road and the Florida Turnpike, west of Blount Road. The property is surrounded by the county-owned natural conservation areas, other industrial uses, and then on the west is Tradewinds Park on the other side of the turnpike. So the applicant is requesting major site plan approval in order to construct a new 215,800 square foot bus maintenance facility and two 140 square foot guardhouses, along with new bus staging and electric charging areas, new employee and fleet parking areas, upgraded stormwater retention areas, and then associated landscaping. The height of the main building is going to be 71 feet, and the two guardhouses will be 17 feet. This project was reviewed by the DRC 4 times throughout 2024, and it was approved by the Architectural Appearance Committee in January. The zoning district is I1, it's general industrial, and the land use is also industrial. The Development Services Department recommends the following conditions if approved tonight. Number 1, the overall site shall maintain a minimum of 20% pervious area in accordance with the I1 zoning district's intensity and dimension standards. Any future development of the portion of the property listed as existing natural undeveloped area shall be limited to meet this requirement. Number 2, the proposed parking spaces south of Building 2 shall be redesigned to provide the minimum dimensions of 9 by 18, continuous curbing, landscape islands at the end of each row, and a landscape island between the abutting head-to-head parking rows. Number 3, any project proposing phased work shall have the owner or contractor install all required site landscaping, including the perimeter, buffers, parking area, landscaping, etc., prior to issuance of the first temporary certificate of occupancy or similar. Number 4, the 3 subject folios shall be unified as one with the unity of title as one development site prior to building permit approval. And number 5 are the standard condition of approvals, which include compliance with the sustainability narrative. Plans need to meet the code requirements from the DRC. The landscape and irrigation plans must comply with all zoning requirements as verified by the city's urban forestry. And finally, a copy of the subtype plan shall be provided at building permit approval. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here as well with their own presentation.
Since we haven't actually seen the site plan yet, anyone who has a question for Lauren is welcome to pose it at this time, but I'd like to see the applicant's presentation before I can make my questions known. Robert.
What's currently out there?
It currently is the Broward County Maintenance Facility location. They're just looking to demo a large portion of their buildings and build a brand new facility, mainly for the electrical buses, or EV buses.
Any other questions at this point? Okay. Thank you. Hear from the applicant.
Thank you.
There you go.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Hiran Shah. I'm with Arcadis. Address is 7000 North Federal Highway, Boca Raton, Florida 33487. I also have a couple of other people from our team. We also have a Broward County Transit representative, as well as our civil team and landscape architect as well, if you have any questions regarding that. As Lauren mentioned, we have a short presentation. I'll quickly go through it, and if you have any questions, please ask us. So first thing I would mention is the goal or objective from Broward County for this project. There were a couple of objectives they had in mind when they started putting the RFP out for this project. The biggest objective is they want to convert their current existing diesel bus fleet into electric fleet, basically. They also are expanding. There are more needs, I guess, from transportation side in the county. They need more space for buses, as well as they need more space for the staff who work on this campus. Initially, when we started this project, it was actually renovation of existing facility. But when we started digging more into renovation of existing facility, it was identified it would be better if they build a brand new facility that would satisfy their needs for the next few decades, not just for the next 5 years or 10 years. The site total is 27 acres, which includes basically 25.5 acres of existing site right now. And then we are also including another 1.5 acre, which is owned by the county, I believe, into this site for a total of 27-acre development. This is the site area. Lauren already showed it to you guys. On the left side, you can see there's a turnpike right here. On the south of the side, there is a Copans Road, and then on the east side, there's a Blunt Road going up there. And then on the north side of the property is also county-owned property. And then the rest of the area is surrounded by basically I-1, which is the industrial use. And this site itself is a I-1 as well. And we are not asking for a change in zoning or any use, basically. We are still going to do the same zoning and building use. This is the aerial view of that site. As you can see, Turnpike on the left of the site, south side, as I said, is the Copans Road. You see there is a solar panels you see in this image. That is the existing operation and maintenance facility that they have right now. Right here, up north of that building, there is a L-shaped building, small. That is admin building, offices that is used by the Broward County Transit. There is a fuel building and a wash building right here. Currently, they use for diesel fuel and then the washing the buses. And then the rest of this center portion is currently used for parking. There are currently existing diesel bus fleet. We have a retention pond on the northwest and northeast corner of the site. There's main entrance currently is from the Copans Road, which is south of the building. And then the buses enter from the Blunt Road currently. So the public entrance or staff entrance is from the Copans Road, and the buses enter from the Blunt Road. As I mentioned earlier, their current capacity on this side is 256 buses. The plan to expand it to 341 buses on this site, as well as expand staff, parking staff, offices. The plan, I believe, is around 400 total staff will be here. Not at the same time, but on and off. There will be around 400 total staff. So they need expansion for offices, their parking area, and everything. And one of the things, I'll go through the design later, but the biggest thing on this one, from the design point of view, was we don't have extra site. We have the same site, and we need to provide additional space for buses as well as staff and the building itself. And what we did was we put parking on top of the new proposed building for buses to use that space right now. Currently, it's basically just the solar panels. That's how we are getting into extra space and extra space for parking as well as for other buildings. And I'll go into the details. Here's the proposed site plan. I don't know if you guys can see the big number 1 building in the middle, orange building. That is the main proposed operation and maintenance facility. Attached to it on the lower left corner of that building, so I'll show it to you here, right here, small attachment that jets out. That is the proposed admin building, which is attached to the operation and maintenance building. We are keeping the number 4 over here, L-shaped building, which is existing building. We are gonna renovate that building from interiors as well as some modification from the exterior as well. And I'll show you the exterior of that as well, proposed exterior. Number 2 and 3, those are the ones I mentioned it to you earlier, fuel building for diesel fuels and the wash building. We are planning to keep those buildings for now until the new building is built. And also the fuel building will stay on the site until the entire fleet has been converted to electric. And the plan is not to convert all the buses at the same time. It's from now till 2035. Okay. So it'll be in different phases. They'll buy separate, convert some diesel buses right now, then every few years they'll change them from diesel buses to electric buses. The other thing I wanted to mention is we are also keeping this dashed line, which is the existing operation maintenance building. It will also stay on the site until the new building is fully constructed for them to continue provide support to their existing diesel bus fleet. So they will still need a place to repair, fix, inspect the existing buses. So we're going to keep that building until the new building is built, and then they're going to, once the new building is built, they're going to demolish the existing building. Any questions so far? Anybody? Here's the existing building photographs. This is an old building. It was originally designed, I believe, in 1982 and started construction in 84, 85. Started operating in 88. It is an industrial building. It looks industrial. There are pieces of this building have gone through multiple hurricanes. It still stands, but there are still issues in some of the parts of the building. It needs major repairs, renovations, and some of the things. This building was built back in 1980s, but those standards, so buses when we had 1980s diesel buses. The new buses have different requirements, different standards that we need to basically update this building, but it would be hard to update this building if you try to provide repair bays for electric buses, because diesel buses require repair from the underneath the buses, electric buses require repair from the top of the buses, and things like that. So there are multiple different requirements which are different for electric buses and new fleet that county wants. Here's guard booths. They are in really bad conditions. You can see they have some air conditionings, but they are window units. Some of them work, some of them don't. Sometimes they put cardboard to shade, basically. The guard doesn't have proper shade areas. They also don't have any restrooms or bathrooms around guard booths. So if they have to go use restroom, they have to basically ask somebody to come over there, relieve them for their duty and it's a 15-minute walk back to the main facility and then come back. So we are improving the guard booths as well in our design. I'll go through the building program now. But the other things I did want to point out is a couple of things. Overall, this new project basically improves overall safety and security of the staff. It improves the quality of life for the staff who will be working here. It also addresses, in general, for the local community, addresses like sustainability, health, safety, welfare. It basically converts all the diesel buses into electric buses, which is basically beneficial for the environment as well, so it benefits the local community really well. And plus, on top of that, even though it's an industrial building, we are trying to bring kind of modern, contemporary architecture to it, making it aesthetically pleasant as well, even though it's an industrial building. Those are just highlights of the design. Here's the footprint of the main operation and maintenance building. This is rotated, so on your left is the north, and the south will be the on your right side would be the Copans. So Turnpike is basically right on the plan south. And this is the main operation building. I'm sorry, I'll move this mic over here. This is where all the maintenance, repair, and inspection work will happen. The buses usually come from the Blunt Road, which is on the plan north, right here on my top left corner. They will usually come here. If they need to go into the building, they will take a left and right here and go in this kind of large circulation area. And they can get out this way also, or they will go here and then go under this covered area, which is basically a roof deck, 3-story above that, basically at the roof deck level. Buses can also go if they needed wash. There is a wash base is new over here, wash building. So they can go directly into this wash building and get out. And then they can make a turn, go up north, and if they need to go parked on the top of the roof deck, there is a ramp right here. The buses can take the ramp and go on top of the roof deck. That's just one circulation pattern. There is also other parking areas, so they can take on the ground. Also, there are a couple of other staging and parking area. They can go there. But this is the ground level on the main and maintenance building circulation. This building on the plan south, currently you see that's the wash building, but on top of that, that's the admin building, which is connected right to the operation and maintenance building. So the staff sometimes don't have to walk across. Currently, they sit in the building 4, and they have to walk across basically in the sun, open sun basically, and sometimes harsh conditions during summertime or even in the rain. So this will provide them more efficient layout basically because it's right attached to it and they can go if they needed to on the roof deck. As well as the bus drivers and everybody will have people who are working on the buses or who's helping with the charging or something like that, they can directly go from the top level of the maintenance or admin building into the roof deck to the bus service. Go to the next level. This is a mezzanine level. As I mentioned, this is the double-lighted space right here for circulation. Buses can go under it. Right here at the plan south, that's the admin building. On this level, there are offices, there are meeting rooms, there's break areas, lockers, things like that. On this area in the main building, this is the double-lighted bays, maintenance bays. There are 3 bays over here, which has a crane also on top to repair and maintain buses from the top. And then the rest of the space over here is either storage or battery storage or the other storage and other back of the house spaces. And then when you go on the top level, this is the roof deck. The main building has a roof deck at the top. And currently, we are planning to have approximately 180 buses stored, staged, and even charged over here. So the smaller hatch over here on the left side, that is where the charging station will be installed, and they are overhead chargers. So when the bus comes from this ramp up here, they can go up here and park it right under this charger. They can charge it. Once it's charged, it can move up here in the front, or they can go to the other parking or staging area. And then the next bus will come and charge over there.
I have to stop you and just ask, what kind of engineering load are you going to need on that building to hold 180 buses on the roof?
Yeah, it is substantial concrete building. There is a lot of concrete in this building for sure.
Wow. Okay.
And it is designed to take that kind of load right now.
Obviously, but
Yes.
wow.
And then on top of that bus parking area, we are putting a canopy, and on top of the canopy, we are also including the solar panels. It's approximately 100,000 square feet of solar panels. The plan is to utilize the existing solar panels they have on the existing maintenance building. Whatever we can get, and we can reuse it. And the rest of the solar panels will be new solar panels. Here's the design of the guard booth. One, as I said, one is at the Copans entrance right here, and the other one is at the Blunt entrance, where the buses enter usually. This one, basically, we are putting a big canopy, so it provides overall shade as well to the guard booth, as well as it makes the entrance pretty obvious, which way is the entrance. It's pretty large site overall. Plus, this guard booth also has a restroom inside, and it's air conditioning as well. Here are some of the images of the operation maintenance building and the admin building. The top image is the admin building you can see from the turnpike side, and you can see this is the maintenance building in the back. So these are offices and meeting rooms and things like that, locker rooms for drivers. And then the bottom of that building is the wash. You can see these are the exits for the wash, vehicle wash. The bottom image is from the Blunt Road, looking directly at the maintenance building. As I mentioned, we have ramps, 2 big ramps going up there. This one goes up basically. You go, circulate around the roof deck, and then come down and get out of the Blunt Road if you need to. This is, again, it's a concrete building. It's an industrial building. We've tried really hard to hide those like industrial brutal architecture and put metal finishes, screening as much as possible, as well as canopies that makes really aesthetically pleasing overall experience when you're around this area. A couple of other images of the operation maintenance building as well as the admin building. This is from the corner. This is the ramp. You can see clearly how the buses will go up and go up on the roof deck and will be parked. These are 4 elevations from each side. As I mentioned earlier, we are also improving the quality of life for the employees on the site. Currently, they do not have any other amenities on site, and we are introducing a lot of amenities. I'll go back to the site for a minute to show it to you what we are doing over there quickly. So currently, as I mentioned earlier, they have a retention pond here, and there's a retention pond here. We are filling this retention pond and moving the pond over here at the Copans entrance. And then we are developing this area, retention area, as the site amenities for the staff. And that is the images you were looking at it, and I'll go back to that image, or those images here. We are providing multiple kind of covered walkways, trail areas, outdoor sitting areas for them. They can go walk around the retention pond if they need to. There'll be sitting spaces, nice pergolas and things like that. Landscape areas, vegetation. There's other things we are doing on the site is we are separating the basically entrances for the buses versus the employees. The employees park over here, buses come from the Blunt Road. Employees can come from the Copans Road. But in case if some employees are dropped off at the Copans Road, they're not driving, they still have to walk a long way back to the admin buildings and admin offices. So we are providing multiple respite areas for them to, either there is a covered stop areas, basically there's a stone sitting areas, wood sitting areas at multiple stops across the site. And then we also have multiple covered walkways joining the buildings, basically. So if you want to go from building 4 to building 5, there is a walkway, a covered walkway, you can use that. I'll also just quickly go over the design concept. As I said, this is a concrete building, and we wanted to make the design much more pleasant, aesthetically pleasant, more pleasing to the surroundings as well as the people who are working there. We use natural colors. We got it from blues and sand colors, I guess, from the ocean and sand. We tried to come up with the copper metal panels around it. We used the graphics to make it interesting corners, even though they are large concrete corners. We've added metal panels. We've added screening to them in some of the other elevations of that building. Materials we are using, as I said, concrete is going to last forever, but at the same time, the aesthetic treatment we are doing are also quite durable materials, so they would last 40, 50 more years. We are also proposing including a site sign, monument sign at the Copans entrance. This is the layout of that sign. And then the last one I have is the building 4 I mentioned. This is the existing building they have on site. We are planning on keeping that, but renovating it to bring it to kind of same language, aesthetic language as the rest of the campus now that we are proposing. So this is the existing building, different photographs. They have a canopy at the entrance. We are renovating, gutting it out from inside and renovating it, but on the outside, we are keeping the exterior walls, windows at the same location, but we are using new paint schemes, and we are introducing new materials that we are using in building 1 and other buildings around the campus. Here's the proposed renovated building 4. These are also offices, this will be offices for the county. And that's all for the presentation.
Thank you. Questions?
I just want to say I'm really impressed with the building, because I used to live across the bus maintenance center in Chicago across the river, and it was nothing like this. You did a really amazing job, and I like how you were very mindful of all of the employees and giving them different space. I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
I'm going to echo what Gigi said, but oh gosh, wow. I think you nailed the design. The design is great. Again, being able to capture the quality of life for the employees, I think that's wonderful. Totally looks state-of-the-art, and I'm assuming when you drive down the turnpike, you're going to be able to see a beautiful building. So all that is wonderful. I'm just really curious how you're going to get all this done. And you have an operation there, right? So, and I know you probably...
That is going to be a challenge for county.
Yeah, it just seems, because you already have how many employees that are working there and buses?
You know how many employees currently are there on stage?
It's roughly 300.
Oh, wow.
Kurt Petgrave, Capital Program Administrator for Transportation Department, 1 North University Drive, Plantation, Florida. So essentially, the plan for the building is there's roughly about 300 employees there currently. The operations, once this is under construction, is currently there's about 270 buses that are parked there daily. We're going to move out about 150 and go to kind of a reduced service where we'll have an alternative site that we'll do temporary operations from. So we're only going to be, and then staff will be there obviously on a reduced level while this is under construction. So it's pretty much the plan, right?
Okay, that, I would definitely have to assume that you're going to have some kind of off-site operation. Do you know where that off-site operation?
We have multiple locations that we're kind of determining which one makes the best in terms of headway, and because they're still going to be maintained from here, it's not going to be a major facility. So they'll be maintained here and then relocated to that site to pull out the alternative day. So they'll first come here at the end of the day, do whatever maintenance procedures are needed, and to transverse to that alternative site for the following day and leave from there for the following day.
All right, I can't wait to see how you're going to park all those buses on the top. That's incredible. But you guys are the experts, so you got that figured out. I'm good.
Other questions?
No, good.
I just have a couple. Staging, how long do you think construction will take?
It's planned for 2.5 years.
And what's the total cost of the investment here?
Currently, it's planned at budgeted $225 million, with FTA funding also supplement.
Wow. That's quite an investment in our city, so we're looking forward to seeing the new design. It is terrific. I also want to commend the Development Review Committee. 4 meetings, that's a lot of work on this project, and they worked with you, I know, in making this the project that we see today. I just have to ask for the record, are you okay with the conditions in the staff report?
Yeah.
Yeah, you agree to those conditions?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for presenters before I open the public hearing? Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to open the public hearing and ask if anyone from the audience would like to speak on this project. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And board members, do you have any other questions for staff, discussion? Then somebody make a motion.
Right? Okay. Let's see. So, in consideration of P&Z application number 2412505, I move that the board finds that competent, substantial evidence has been presented that satisfies the review criteria and approves the major site plan as is, right? Subject
To the
to, I'm
five
sorry.
conditions.
Thank you. Subject to 5 conditions provided by staff.
Second.
Bobby, we have a motion and a second. Would you please call the roll?
Carrie Ann Worley,
Yes.
Paul Fisher,
Yes.
Gigi Dubeck,
Yes.
Robert Hartzell,
Yes.
David Mingus,
Yes.
Carla Coleman.
Yes. Good luck and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, LN 687, text amendment, artificial turf. Mr. Wymus, you're up.
Weems.
Weems. Why do I always call you Wymus?
It's okay, it's not spelled very user-friendly.
Just as long as I call you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good evening. Max Weems, Principal Planner and Development Services. This is a staff-initiated text amendment regarding the use of synthetic turf in the city of Pompano Beach. During the March 2024 City Commission meeting, the Commission asked staff to look into the city's synthetic turf regulations. Our code doesn't speak to synthetic turf specifically. We have pervious area and conversely impervious area requirements, as well as definitions for what is pervious area, and it is explicitly living material. Within that pervious area, right, so that's pretty much all that we have in terms of how do we apply regulation to lawn area or synthetic or not synthetic. So, you know, should you have a 8,000 square foot lot in an RS2 zoning district, you know, as a start, we would look at what is the front yard setback, pervious area, and required front yard to be pervious area for that property. And those standards, its front yard setback is 25 feet. The pervious area minimum has to be 30% for the lot. And then within the front yard, that 25 feet of depth, 50% of that area is required to be pervious. Those are our current standards. So impervious surface is land surface that does not allow or minimally allows the penetration of water. Examples are buildings and non-porous concrete, asphalt pavements. And a pervious area is the area of a site covered by living plant material that allows precipitation to infiltrate directly into the ground. Up to 15% of that area, so the defined pervious area, may be covered by mulch or other types of non-living materials. So in recent history, we've interpreted this to apply to artificial turf or synthetic turf, as well as things like mulch or pebbles or rock or things that you would typically have in like a flower bed, because obviously that's pervious. It's intended to be like a pervious space and with living material, but you have some ground cover between plantings that is not technically living material. So anyways, it can be determined that on an 8,000 square foot lot, RS district, the front yard, the first 25 feet of depth is 2,000 square feet. The required pervious area of that total property would be 2,400 square feet, and the pervious area that would be required within the front yard would be 1,000 square feet. So those are our current requirements. And what that might look like, here's an example lot. I just gave an 80 by 100 dimension with a foundation in the middle. This is how that may be developed, green being lawn or pervious area, the gray being the paved areas, a driveway, a pathway leading to your house, your backyard with a deck and pool. Maybe you have a shed, maybe you have a tiki hut, I don't know. And so that's kind of a typical pattern of development where you see the remaining pervious area that's required. And then in the front yard, they've had their driveway and their paved paths leading to the door. And in that space, that's the depth that I'm saying where 50% of that area is required to remain pervious. The difficulty, well, okay, so in these scenarios, how much artificial turf can I add to my property? Well, that's going to be limited to how much impervious area have you provided on your property? So if 30% is required to be pervious, 70% is enabled to be impervious. So in this example on the left, I've shown this kind of brighter green. I hope that's clear on your screens, the differentiation. So as an example, that's the additional area that might be permitted for artificial turf. And in the front yard, you can see now we have maybe about 50% of that front yard remaining as pervious. But honestly, I don't think that's what people want. The reason that I think this is coming up now is because of a prevalence of violations. People have gone and done work and installed artificial turf on their properties, and it's never compliant with our standards. They never maintain the 30% pervious area that's required for the site. It's something more like these examples where they've turned a majority of their lawn area into artificial turf, or what our code would define as an impervious surface. And in the front yard as well, it's never limited to 50% of the front yard. It's much more. So why regulate artificial turf at all? You know, it generally appears like grass, let it be grass. Well, generally, the staff report has greater detail, but for the purpose of keeping this presentation brief, living material cleans the air, cleans the water, allows direct recharge into our water supply, reduces heat, reduces stormwater runoff. Of course, synthetic turf may be permeable, but they're frequently installed on a compacted subgrade that reduces that direct permeability. Synthetic turf systems may include drainage systems that would require to be installed concurrent to the turf's installation and then require regular maintenance. I should also point out that a large monoculture like grass isn't necessarily the best thing for the environment, and of course fertilizer is required, and over-fertilizing a lawn is also a common source of contamination into our water supply, but I think that's to a lesser extent important here. And also, any synthetic turf installed must be consistent with the other regulations of the city's code of ordinances, like our landscape code, the building code, floodplain management, and our public rights-of-way. And so that's why I think it's important to have regulation related to turf, one, so that we get the building permit application, and two, so that we can ensure all of the city's regulation is addressed, not just whatever we might establish for synthetic turf. So in the backup, there's a complete review of other municipalities and the standards that they may have, and I've summarized it here. They typically provide a consistent definition of what synthetic turf is: a dense continuous surface of synthetic fibers mounted on a permeable backing and of sufficient density and green color to replicate the appearance of a healthy natural grass. It's a pretty common definition that I found. The next thing that they'll describe is do we treat it as pervious or impervious, or does that even matter in those cities' codes? And they frequently require that synthetic turf be mounted on a permeable backing with various standards that lead to sufficient drainage for that property. Where compliant, synthetic turf may be considered pervious, as is the case in Lighthouse Point, Lantana, Marco Island, Ocean Ridge, Surfside, for example. However, it's not always the case. The city of Orlando, West Palm, and Winter Park treat synthetic turf the same as they would an impervious surface, like our code does today. They always have design standards focused on the appearance, that it looks like grass, that it provides a minimum pile height, so like the height of your grass, for example, and density, so that it's not just sort of like a thin material that can fall over or actually appear like a lawn would, that it's a quality material, and that it has permeability. That there's a warranty provided by the manufacturer that guarantees that that color is maintained, that that height is maintained, that any damage can be mitigated, and that the materials that provided might be lead-free or something that's disposable following certain protocols. Right. So then there's installation standards. I'll just kind of focus on the bold because otherwise I'm just reading too much. That it's anchored in place, that the seams are fitted, and that it is a seamless appearance, installed over a subgrade that provides positive drainage, that there's an infill medium, like a substrate that supports the grass so that it stays up and it kind of cushions the material. That there's a barrier between where you have artificial turf or synthetic turf and a natural area like a flower bed to prevent living material crossing into the synthetic turf and leading to the degradation of that or further complicating maintenance. And that there are precautions for installation around the existing trees. Maintenance standards are always provided. That again, focused on the color, the height, the quality of what's provided, that it's maintained in a clean condition, that it's replaced if it falls into disrepair. There's frequent prohibitions related to that it's not permitted in the right-of-way or any swales or any on-site drainage features, that it would be prohibited within certain distances of natural waterways. Both of those standards are focused on contaminants that may happen from the substrate or the infill material, either in a flood scenario or just by wind or existing, ending up within the the waterway or within the city's drainage system. Also, like right now we don't allow gravel to be a driveway material, and that's one, because it might end up in a drainage system, and two, because if you have gravel frequently on the pavement and then that's constantly being run over by tires, it damages that pavement in a way that's exacerbated than if that gravel were never there in the first place. And of course, gravel isn't really a preferred substrate for artificial turf, but it's the same type of logic, that this infill material may end up in the street or drainage systems or waterways. Outdoor plastic carpeting not to be used in replacement for turf, and rubber not to be the infill infill material, and as well as within any drip line for a tree, no artificial turf or synthetic turf. We have some relevant regulation. Recently we approved a requirement for a stormwater management plan for new construction or substantial improvement of single-family or two-family development. What that does is it applies a kind of county typical drainage requirement for commercial or multifamily properties, so that first inch of rainfall be maintained on the property. Currently, our standards related to drainage for single-family or two-family development was really just tied to our pervious area requirements. There was no math or engineering calculations required to prove that there was sufficient drainage for a single-family or two-family property. With this ordinance, we now are requiring that 1 inch be provided on an engineered drawing demonstrating that they have sufficient drainage if it's single-family or two-family new construction or substantial improvement. One thing that I'm proposing is that we add the installation of synthetic turf as a trigger for the provision of a stormwater management plan. Because if we were formerly relying on the pervious area to provide sufficient drainage on that property, and now we're saying provide turf in lieu of pervious area, we need to kind of connect all of the other regulation that the city has. So the drafted regulation, where are we looking to provide this? In all districts, but only to those uses that are single family or two family. That might seem confusing. Why would we allow it in a commercial district? Well, because we have some like B2 or B1 areas where single family is a permitted development with the provision of flex. So it's just to keep it clean, we're gonna just permit it as an accessory in all districts, but only to single family or two family development. We've provided that standard definition, and we've created those standards consistent with the most frequent types of standards that I identified previously, related to, well, number one, that they provide the stormwater management plan, but two, that they have the design standards, that the material represents live turf with the warranty. We've established a minimum height of 1.5 inches, a face weight of 56 ounces. That's a common industry term for a measurement of density of artificial turf. There were all kinds of minimums and maximums. I kind of picked something in the middle. And then I've added a standard that if the height of the turf is taller than the 1.5 inches, that the face weight is also expected to increase, but there's no actual linking there. That's just something that we're going to have subject to staff review. Also that the material is polyethylene, a dual yarn system, and made in USA. Polyethylene, I tried to say, what is the most green material for synthetic turf? And as much as the marketing would lead you to believe that there are recyclable materials and that they're toxic free or these types of things, in the end, whatever you install on the ground has a limited life and you'll eventually have to throw it away. And even if you take it to a recycling facility, it may not be deemed a recyclable material and it'll ultimately end up in the landfill. And any plastic material is never going to be considered a green material unless it's fully recyclable. So polyethylene is the latest and most common type of synthetic turf, and it has in terms of drawbacks, it has the least or equal to the others. So that's the reason for that material. And made in USA is, I don't know, just so we can know that the packaging accurately represents the material. Minimum permeability of 30 inches per hour per square yard is a standard drainage rate for those products that provide that positive drainage. Installation standards, we'd want it done with licensed contractors or landscape architects, over the subgrade, compacted with porous material, and anchored with no visible seams, with an infill material of silica sand or other as approved by the city engineer. I left some room for interpretation, but silica sand is certainly the preference. And the city engineer is also the one that reviews any activity within the swale or that may affect the city's drainage system, so that's the rationale there. Some additional standards are that any property that's seeking to install artificial turf be in full compliance or brought into full compliance with the city's landscape code, that areas of living plant material shall be maintained in conjunction with synthetic turf if it's installed in the front yard. That can be a combination of hedges or trees or palms or shrubs. That the synthetic turf be separated from plant materials or tree wells by concrete strips, the separations I was previously mentioning. That no irrigation be directed to affect the area of synthetic turf, and that the turf be anchored behind the seawall and not directly attached or mounted to a seawall or seawall cap. Similar maintenance standards, that it be maintained in a clean and attractive expected appearance, and that the turf be prohibited within the right-of-way or swales, and that all uses of synthetic turf shall require a building permit. I also in the draft language specify the submittal requirements of an application for the synthetic turf, just to make it real clear. So of our accessory use standards, this will certainly be one of the more robust, but I think this gives us a nice, should we move forward with this, it will give us a nice starting point for evolving our standards related to synthetic turf. I think we're going for sort of like middle ground to upper level of treatment in terms of our regulation. And I don't know how this will affect those properties that are currently in violation. I think that the installation standards, the techniques, the materials will be across the board. We're certainly not looking to permit just sort of like rolled out carpets in lieu of grass. So we'll start with this and see where we get in terms of one, satisfaction of the community, and two, satisfaction of the commission. With that, I'm happy to give a department recommendation. It's either approval as may be amended by this board or tabled to give staff time to address any issues raised here tonight by me, the board, or the general public.
Well, I think it's going to be us. And see a lot of the general public here tonight.
Sure.
But I'll hold my questions to last because I know some of the rest of you have questions and comments and suggestions. I have several, but I'd like to hear from you guys first. Let's just start down at this end. David, you want have anything at this point, or you want to wait and chime in later?
I'll try in later.
Okay, Carrie Ann, let's start with you.
Yeah, I was actually, as you're going through, wondering if it was going to be a permitting situation, so thank you for addressing that. The other, I should know this, but if you lay down sod, you don't have to get permits, right? Or do you?
For the installation of sod, I don't think so.
No, okay, so this would be an addition, okay. And then, and also like the seawall, I know, like tuck it behind the seawall, but I've seen lawns, like the front lawn where it goes straight out to the road. Like how would we address something like that?
When you say front lawn, are you talking about natural grass or synthetic?
No, the synthetic. So obviously these are ones that are probably in violation, but.
Right, so yeah, any that you see are in violation.
Right.
In my initial discussions with the city engineer's office, utilities, there is no flavor for allowing synthetic turf within the swale. And I think that's wise. It seems to be standard practice. So they will be, fined until they're brought into compliance, but at least now we may have a path towards compliance. They just won't get everything they initially installed. And of course, that work should have been done with permitting in the first place, but it never would have been approved.
Right, okay, so I guess the point is to try to make this, to make it a little bit more difficult to get this? I mean, personally, I like to see natural grass, and, I think it's just more appealing,
So I don't think we want to be overly burdensome with this while still respecting, no? While still respecting community preference. Obviously, there's some desire for this, but I think that we need to do it in a way that's responsible. And I don't imagine every lawn is going to turn into artificial turf, but we kind of have to think that way when we create these regulations. And so what we want to do is enable a path forward with some rationale based on comparable examples and what we think would work well for the city. And so I think that's generally the direction we're going in.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fisher.
So a couple questions. I'm sure you have talked over with Wade and their urban forester about all this and has discussed everything with him?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And I'm sure he has reservations, but.
Well, so we're ensuring that the landscape code standards are met. Those are not related to sod. It says you have to have ground cover. Of course, we'll have to amend that to acknowledge this, but the minimum number of trees be provided on the property, that the drip line be protected, and that they have enough access to fresh water that would be necessary to sustain them. So those are all considerations that we've made in this ordinance. I have a feeling that those properties that want their entire yard to be artificial synthetic turf are probably the ones that have fewer trees than they would otherwise be required to have. But
So it should trigger, because they have to come for a building permit, it should trigger them to be able to come to compliance with the landscaping code, which is great.
correct.
My only other concern is obviously drainage in the front yard, because with swells nowadays, if you redo your driveway, for example, and if you see a lot of houses, they have kind of like a dip in their swell to take the water. Now you have to build that up and fill that in if you do your driveway. None of
It's
now?
the opposite.
The opposite now? It has a dip in?
You have to dig it out.
Dig it out. Okay, never mind then.
So you're talking about the unpaved portion of this.
Unpaved portion, yes.
Yeah,
It does have to be dug in, correct? Okay, I just want to make sure of that, just because I don't want it to be built up and then wash back in, and then if they're not the turf is not absorbing the water, then you're just going to be filling the street with just a bunch of water and not be able to absorb it.
So
I know you have to have your own drainage and have a drainage plan, but I've seen, drains get plugged and there's water everywhere. So I just was my only other concern, so, perfect.
Mr. Herzl?
I don't envy you at all.
What is it?
I don't envy you at all. This is a hot mess. Yeah, you could go either way. I mean, there's so many. It's like a green grass. Like when you see a really green grass, you know they're over fertilizing, and people don't know, and they fertilize during the summer, and they over fertilize in the summer, and it rains, and it washes right off, and then it goes in the sewer system, and it's Pompano's problem. That's on one hand. On the other hand, synthetic turf is going to be a hot mess floating around. We get a hurricane and we get a serious flood here. I don't care how you tie it down, you're going to have mounds and mounds of artificial turf sitting at the curb, waiting for bulk pickup. Nobody's going to recycle their artificial turf. Like, let me stack it up in the backyard and bring it to the recycle plant. It's not going to happen. So that's why I'm saying it's not an envious position. I had to be instructed to write oh, how do we add more artificial turf? But you had given us, to get back to let's try and figure it out. You at the very beginning you had a couple slides that showed what today's rules are on the amount of artificial turf you can have. Are we getting rid of that?
No. The way that it's drafted is that if you are providing artificial turf and you have a stormwater management plan that demonstrates sufficient drainage on the property, then that is treated in lieu of pervious area. So the impervious area requirements will still apply to non-synthetic turf properties, but those that apply for synthetic turf will have this drainage plan on file and then be held to maintain that plan.
So if my neighbor, and I'm talking hypothetically, if my neighbor gets carpet in the yard or the turf in the yard and has the full-on engineered drawings and diagrams and drainage plan, and 2 years down the road, that drain, as we know in Pompano, we clean our drains all the time, but the residents aren't cleaning their drains. So how do we assure that they're doing upkeep on this drainage in order to be an impervious surface so as not to flood out their neighbors?
So we do have a mechanism to use code enforcement for that purpose, but it's difficult to capture the problem when it's not a rain event. If you call code enforcement to come out to inspect something and it's dry, that's a challenge. So I don't really have a good answer for you, except that we do have the mechanism for code enforcement to enforce the stormwater management plan and the drainage requirements of that plan. I don't know how they test the quality of that plan on a dry day, but that's what we're currently working with.
So we wouldn't really test how it works. We would look to make sure they had the same swales in their side yards that they were supposed to have based on their management plan. Their backyard wasn't more pervious and it was depressed in the areas they're supposed to have retention, that their street swale is not, it's still at the correct profile. Because as your natural grass grows, your swale becomes less deep. So that's how we use those the drainage master plans. We don't pour water on it and see what happens. We just make sure they have the right profiles of how that was supposed to be graded.
Jean, just your name and position.
Jean Dolan, Development Services. I was sworn in.
Thank you.
Additional, Mr. Herzl?
Yeah, I would. My thoughts are that it seems like we're trying to change something that doesn't need to be changed. It's almost like we're trying to make it happen, and we don't know what the results are going to be, and we'll just, okay, let's see what happens. I mean, I'm trying to think of conditions that we could give, and I don't even know. I really it's very your conditions that you've put on it has made it so cost prohibitive. People that are complaining that have code violations are going to Lowe's and buying carpet. Buying, their $6.95 green rug and they're putting it out there. When you're talking artificial turf and you know how much the city spent on these parks with the artificial turf, that's not the same stuff that you're buying at Lowe's, and the requirements that you're giving those are pretty firm conditions, and that's, you know, one of the things that gives me a little solace in it is that there's that it is very difficult. It's going to be very expensive to have this done.
So let me actually go back to that, these graphics here, this one. So the impervious-pervious calculation, if you have less than 70% of your site as impervious, you are able to install up to that 70% of as whatever material you like. But as soon as it encroaches on what would otherwise be required as pervious area, that's when these standards kick in. So there are circumstances where someone could do a lesser quality for a finite area of their property. But then as soon as it expands beyond that, we're trying to maintain the expectation of what we'd achieve from a natural lawn, but with a synthetic material. So it is not cheap, and we acknowledge that this will be an expensive operation, but if somebody is preferring to do it, then we're giving them the path for it. And quite frankly, the properties that we see in violation that have done it with whatever material they want are not inexpensive properties. Not that matters, but.
And then I guess my last question is, when you talk about compatibility with your other neighbors, so if your neighbor has, and maybe Gene addressed this, but it was, when your neighbor has regular grass, St. Augustine, like we all have, and then somebody puts in artificial turf, and you have your landscaper, does it border right up to like your neighbor's grass to where they're lawn people, or dad mowing his lawn tears out some artificial turf that just cost the guy $2,000?
So as drafted, you can put it to the property line. There were examples of municipalities that had a setback from the property line, and then there were some that didn't address it at all. So we do not have a setback from property line standard.
I know my lawn guys had every single sprinkler that I have. I know they would tear my neighbor's artificial turf up.
Right.
Yeah.
And leave a note on the door.
Maybe.
Tore up the neighbor's yard. All right, that's all the questions. I think you answered it. And again, you know, it's a tough one, but I see where I'm going.
I see a lot of townhouses with the synthetic turf because they have very small parcels of front space, maybe no sides, and maybe a little bit in the back. And what's unusual about it is you'll see a couple of townhouses, maybe 2 or 3 together that have it, and then you have one that doesn't. So it's not consistent with all the townhouses in a row. And then I don't know how, if this was going to be passed, how you manage it with the people that have had it for a long time. And now you're asking them to be code compliant, and they don't even know what code compliant is.
Right.
So it's kind of, you know, you're going backwards, you know, going to all these people that have already made the investment, and then we're changing it. It's going to be tough to manage.
That's not unfamiliar territory for our code enforcement and planning and zoning divisions. We frequently have properties do things either without permits, or when they get a permit, they install something else, and then it becomes this, you know, they get a violation, they have a period of correction, they either do or don't correct it, and eventually the fines or the pressure or whatever mechanism, I'm not sure the code enforcement uses, the projects are brought into compliance. They rip out whatever they did, and they'll have to start from some scratch with something that's code permitted. So that happens, you know, not just with synthetic turf. In fact, historically, we've never allowed this within the front yards, and there have been properties that, you know, like let's say you want to sell your property, you've got to clean up your violations, but you've had this turf that you've just been stacking up fines on. Well, they rip it out, they lay in a sod, they sell their property. So it has happened with complete removal. So with that being, some history, I can see an easier time of somebody bringing their site into compliance. Because there are so many products that do have these types of drainage systems, they may have to make some on-site improvements to provide private swale areas, but it's certainly providing a much clearer avenue towards approval than the straight up denial that we have today.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And to the point about townhomes, we aren't looking to permit synthetic turf as a material beyond the impervious area allowed for townhomes with this amendment. Right now, the townhomes, each individual lot has a impervious area, or on some sites, if it's more a planned community, that's based on the entire property. So their impervious areas may be like a common green area rather than the backyard. In our new applications, we're being really clear with the site plans to specify on each site, let's say they want to expand, let's say one property wants to expand their deck to cover 100% of their townhouse lot. If every site in that development did that, the overall site would be under on their pervious area requirements. So now with each new application, we're having them specify how much can any individual future owner expand their patio while still maintaining the minimum pervious area on the property. So that's how we currently treat townhomes, and we aren't looking to expand the impervious or artificial turf areas for those developments.
Okay, my turn. You have another, yeah, James.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to confirm with Max that the draft, whatever the draft may look like, there's two things. One, this is being prompted by inquiry by the city commission. That's number one. Then number two, if there's a draft that does arise out of this board, that draft will include some sort of amortization schedule for the implementation. So if you do have individuals who are not current compliant because of the drastic nature of it, there may be an amortization schedule that can be placed into the document that would allow them to come into compliance over time so that it's not because of the...
I don't think that we would do that. That typically happens when you have a permitted condition and then those qualities change. Right now, we wouldn't have a period to come into compliance because they were never in compliance.
I thought you just said that it's possible to put in synthetic turf if it meets the dimensions.
Well, those would have been permitted.
Right, that's what I'm referring to. In other words, there are individuals who may be meeting whatever the standard is, but if you put into the code these higher standards, would they not be required to then change what they currently have?
No, not the previously permitted, no. If it was previously permitted, it would still be permitted with what we're proposing here. Right, yeah, it's this whole amendment is to exceed what would presently be allowed. So there's no, as far as I know, there would be no amortization of like something to be brought back into compliance.
So when you refer to the material that the particular artificial turf or synthetic turf is composed of, its drainage and all of those components, that would not be applicable to someone who has maintained the percentages.
Right. If we have a property where it was approved today, they are maintaining their required pervious area. Should they seek to expand that into their pervious area, then we would be triggering this whole section. So if you're familiar with any properties, they're probably not permitted.
So compliance could be, in some of those instances, just a reduction of the percentage. Is that what you're saying?
Compliance So to bring a property into compliance, they would,
And
right. Most of those that are not in compliance have substantially more artificial turf than our current code would allow. So they could remove it, but they're not going to want to do that. They're going to want to follow this ordinance.
That actually cleared a lot up for me. And then I'll just make the other comment, and I agree with you. I think it's also going to cause a lot of issues with neighbors and violations and complaints and all that stuff if we just don't have more restrictions on it, so it's good.
Mr. Fisher, do you have something else?
Yeah, the only like comment was, I guess, not, talking about our attorneys, is most likely the only people that are in compliance if they have like a small putting green in their backyard. Realistically, that's what they're at.
Exactly.
It's pretty much going on,
The current,
percentage-wise.
the way that we currently treat artificial turf is more like a patio.
Yeah.
It's taking up the same buildable area calculation. So we don't, right. So it's
like a putting
if it's
green in the
permitted,
backyard,
it's a
yeah.
very minor area of their property.
I would love to see maybe a study in the long term, if this does pass, of what it does affect in our water. You know, does this save water costs for the city itself? You know, long term wise, I would love to see a study in the future if this ever passes. So.
Okay, couple of things. I happen to live and have lived for over 40 years in a neighborhood that is constantly rebuilding because most of the houses are on the water or across the street from the water. And as the old houses built in the 60s, 50s and 60s get knocked down, new houses are built and they're more than likely higher. So drainage has become an incredible, incredible issue. If we allow more synthetic turf, it is not as permeable, I don't care what standards it's meeting, as natural landscaping. And we have a real problem. Storms are getting more severe, rainage drops are really heavy. I do support, and Max, you have done incredible work on this. This is like trying to carve up the baby. But I really am not supportive of anything that would allow us to, in any way, increase the impervious area of single-family homes. I do agree we need to put these standards in for anyone who hasn't built to the absolute limits of their lot, which is what's happening most of the time, and then they're still trying to put in artificial turf. But some really great points have been raised by other members of the board tonight. Can you, with the support of anyone who's brought these issues up, perhaps put something in the draft that talks about having a hard barrier between lot lines?
Okay.
That way it would keep the next door neighbor's landscaper from damaging your turf.
And to clarify, you mean like a vertical barrier, not a setback?
Right. Well, an edging of some sort, because nobody's going to want to do a setback. The setback doesn't make as much sense as a barrier does. If he wants to, and if you want to say the barrier has to be set back, fine, but there's got to be a barrier of some sort.
Sure. We can take the same standard that we apply to the like root barrier around any natural areas on property to the perimeter of the property.
Right. And I really personally have a huge issue with the artificial turf going all the way down to the seawall. That is just inviting that runoff into the canals.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that in some other places there has been a limit to how close to the edge of the property in the back you can get if you are adjacent to a canal. So can we do something there to protect runoff in our waterways? And just to make sure I understand this, we are treating artificial turf as impervious surface in your proposed ordinance.
No, it's being permitted in lieu of meeting the pervious area calculation. So, yeah, it's not the 30% is maintained, it's that the pervious, or the drainage that the pervious would provide is otherwise met. So it's like a in lieu.
Do you really expect many people are going to be able to meet the requirements?
Yes. I mean, not easily, but.
Can we perhaps leave those regulations in place and still they say they have to have a lesser amount of pervious surface?
Being, so.
We'll give them 10%. You
Pervious
still have to
being-
have 20% pervious surface. I'm just
you're
throwing
talking
this
about
out
like
for
a
discussion.
natural or direct percolation type system. Because
Yes,
there will
because
be,
the runoff is going to be tremendous, especially in rainstorms.
there will be people who will argue that artificial turf is permeable and that it allows water to pass through its backing and then through a porous subbase, which of course is more compacted and less permeable than natural sod in the soil. But
If you pull up my grass, there's sand under it. It's no different than what's under anybody who's had a lawn for any length of time. It's not a brand new lawn. There's not dirt under there. It's sand under there.
right, versus the like 3-inch base that's compacted that's required under a synthetic lawn. So I'm just saying
Okay.
we have to be careful about when we say maintain a pervious area, it has to be a specifically defined type of pervious. So that's why our code currently just says a living material.
Okay, I'd still like to see some living material. Can you go back to your list of prohibitions?
Of general codes?
Yeah. There. The right-of-ways, swales, you have included in yours. The prohibition within a certain distance of natural waterways is what I've just basically asked you to add. Talk to me about the drip line. Who used the drip line? I really like that because it's going to keep the health of the trees, I think, better.
You're asking what city did I pull that from?
Do you remember? Well, what would let me ask it a different way. What would Wade say about that?
Right. I'm sorry?
What would Wade say about prohibiting it within the drip line of any tree?
Well, that would be important, that we allow for that to be uncovered and exposed to direct percolation from rainfall or irrigation.
Can we add that into our code?
I have that.
You did? I couldn't find it. I'm so sorry.
And it is also a requirement of our landscape code currently.
Okay.
It's reinforced within our standards.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was in there too because I have the best trees in the neighborhood and my neighbors are always asking me, how do you get your trees to grow? Well, I take care of them.
I don't suffocate them.
Yeah. Okay. This is a lot to absorb in one meeting. Can you take some of the ideas that we've talked about here to tighten this up a little bit and maybe come back to us at the next meeting?
Yeah. Can I just recap my notes?
Yeah.
And,
I have a quick question. I'm just
Sure.
kind of going back to the neighbors. Is there a way to put something in there that states if something is damaged based on X, Y, Z, that it's not your neighbor's fault?
Can you give me a for example? Like, what are you envisioning?
No, the example is they're cutting the grass and their landscaper hits their grass, and now, again, how much does that cost? I mean, it might not be possible. I'm just asking. It's just, to me, that's a big issue because that could cost the neighbor a lot of money. The
natural grass neighbor.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's why I wanted some sort of barrier in there.
Okay, actually, we did address that. You're right. So if we did a barrier, then that would.
He's going to come back to us with what kind of barrier and exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, otherwise I think it would be a civil
Hartzell.
matter we wouldn't really want to involve ourselves in. Yeah, but I hear your point. So setbacks from.
I have one more.
Sure.
I just want to make sure it makes the list that with kids that have played on artificial turf, like sporting events, they melt their shoes. You have to buy them new cleats after every game because they will melt the bottom of their shoes. That's how hot it gets. So from what you said about it being hotter, it is way hotter than grass. It doesn't have a cooling effect. It is extremely hot.
This is why I want us to look at, this is why I really want us to look at still requiring a certain amount of living matter in the yards. I can see somebody getting really extreme with this, and it's not what we want.
So to that point, the property will still have to provide the landscaping code requirements, the number of trees and shrubs. If they do synthetic turf in the front yard, it has to be in combination with living elements like shrubs, trees, or palms, which can be the required landscaping or in addition if they already have that landscaping on site. I'll clarify the drip line language and that's kind of all I got.
I really want to make this as difficult as possible for the permeation of water, the environment as a whole, and drainage. I just.
So the notes that I have written down are related to the setbacks from property lines. It didn't really seem like that was a major point as long as there was a barrier, some kind of physical separation between properties, except where abutting a waterway. So I'll come back with examples and some recommended dimensions. I'll also follow up with the city attorney's office regarding amortization and whether that is important to include in the regulation. We talked about permeability, that it's not as permeable kind of no matter what you do. To clarify the language regarding the drip line, was there anything else that you'd like to see in a revision to this?
Anybody? Jump in?
Yeah, of course. You'll have a month.
Okay.
I would like to, I don't want to.
No, please, go. No, go.
But I would like to go back and look at what the commission has asked for, and just to get a perspective of what their ideas were for the artificial turf, because I did not watch it, so I did not, and I was not here. But I would like to understand where they were coming from, and that might help me throw an idea at you or whatever.
Sure. So for you and for the record, that was asked at the March 12th, 2024 City Commission meeting.
2020.
A year ago.
It wasn't last week.
Yeah.
Or no, in the future.
2020. Yeah. That's next week.
One last comment.
Yes.
Just with the length or the setback from the seawall, obviously I'm sure there's a study involved, but more runoff in that seawall is going to create some sort of erosion, just like it would be if at the base of your home, just water sitting there. So I'm sure there's some sort of maybe 24 inches or so. Just be aware of that. I'm sure there's a study of some sort that shows that, something, hopefully.
Okay.
I'm just scared if it's like 6 inches setback, you know, all that water's going to run off that isostatic turf and just wash out at seawall erosion. Really, really bad, so.
In my head, I was imagining more
Yeah.
than this.
Yeah, perfect. Just want to make sure, just want to bring attention to that, so.
I'll consider this, of course.
Serves them right for putting in artificial turf.
Yeah, I agree.
I just wanted to remind the board that because staff is responding to the commission's request, and this board is reviewing, as it always does, text amendments, the text amendment that ultimately comes back before you for review, you still have the ability to, as they say, recommend up or down. And of course, if the recommendation is against going forward with this and still staff moves forward with that text, you can put in those items that you still feel were either prohibitions or things to be taken into consideration. You can still have that option to do that. I just want to make sure the board fully understands that, and you're reviewing because it is a text amendment.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to make it clear, I'm not against this. I just really want to make sure that we are considering all aspects of the implications of what we're doing.
I appreciate that. This took a lot of research, so I certainly didn't expect all of you patient and the backup alone. I'll take your recommendations, and in the meantime, feel free to follow up with me on any additional insights that you may have. Well, assuming we haven't made a motion yet, but.
We haven't made a motion yet, but considering all this discussion here tonight, if no one has anything else to say at this meeting, I'll entertain a motion. We can vote it up tonight, or we can bring it back for more consideration. So, Mr. Fisher, did you say you're ready to make a motion?
Ultimate question is,
Want me to do it?
you can, don't we have to make it in a certain language if we do two? Remember that one time we had that?
Well, no.
No, it's right
this
here,
is-
Chair. I'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Hartzell.
A motion that the item be tabled to give staff time to address the issues raised by the board, staff, and the general public.
Does staff want to bring it back at the next meeting, or do you want more time than that?
I will prepare for the next meeting. Should we need more time? I don't think that's something I can really do, but I think a month is sufficient.
Okay. Would you like to bring it back suggest to be brought back for a time certain of next month?
Yes, I put that in my motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Atkins?
Robert Hartzell,
Yes.
Paul Fisher,
Yes.
Gigi DeBeck,
Yes.
David Mingus,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Worley,
Yes.
Carla Coleman.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you much.
Robust discussion. And Mr. Weems, thank you so much for all your work on this.
Pleasure.
Is there audience to be heard? Audience to be heard?
Ms. Coleman,
Yes.
just for the record, the next scheduled date for the Planning and Zoning Board is March 26, 2025.
Thank you. Can you include that in Mr. Hartzell's motion, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Other business, reports by staff.
Just welcome to the new members, and thank you to the alternates for serving.
Thank you.
Let's start with our newest member. Would you like to say anything? This is board members' discussion.
No, I'm just really thrilled to be, part of this board and contributing to improvements. So,
Welcome.
thank you.
See you next month.
See you next month.
Mr. Hartzell.
As usual, I want to thank staff and the council. You guys do a fantastic job. This is always You know, we all volunteer, and we all do this, and you guys make it so easy. It's like, I look forward to it every month for some weird reason. So, it's actually fun, and it's exciting, and staff is always put in these unenviable positions, and it's like, we're talking about artificial turf, and it's like, what a weird, like, it's not like end of the world stuff, you know? But it is complicated, and that's what makes it, you know, very cerebral and interesting to do. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff, for, you know, always presenting it so well that it always, you know, I usually come in here with some kind of weird preconception of what's going to go on. And then you guys explain it. I'm like, oh, well, I didn't look at it like that. So I do appreciate it, giving other perspectives and whatnot. And for everybody that volunteers that sits on this board, and the alternates and our new member, that I think, thank you for coming out.
Mr. Fisher?
Not much other than we do have, just want to bring in people's attention, we do have roundtable of the new downtown coming up. I believe it's March 17th, 18th. I think Eddie Pat Larkins is the 17th, 18th is at Emily Olson. So if you want to be, you know, educated on what possibly can be presented for the new downtown, please put that on your schedules. So other than that, thank you. Chair?
Thank you. Ms. Worley?
I agree. You know, I do look forward to these meetings, and I enjoy, you know, like you said, it's volunteering, but, you know, you feel like you're definitely giving back to the community. And so I'm proud to be part of this board, even though it's an alternate. That's okay. And I do appreciate you guys and the work that you put into it, because these are long nights. I was here last night too, and you guys were all sitting here as well. So thank you. And on a fun note, you guys probably already know, but if you don't, there's the vault ribbon cutting tomorrow night at, I think, 5:36, something, 6? Okay. So hope to see you guys there.
Mangus?
I'm really happy to be a part of this board as an alternate. But I really do appreciate I really do appreciate all the work that's been shown to us tonight. A lot of thought. And I think the board's doing the right thing by tabling it till next meeting. Thank you.
Counselor? Bobby, anything from you?
No, ma'am.
All right. I don't have a button up here. We'll explain this to you.
Okay.
One of our former board members made the motion to adjourn for many, many, many years, and he rotated off last year, and he taped that, and he's still with us in a way.
Oh, that's funny.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I thought Fred was going to be selfish.